Woody Allen has broken his silence, stepping into the light after years of distance with an emotional, sweeping tribute to Diane Keaton, the woman whose presence, he says, defined much of his life, his art, and now his grief. From the first line, he frames his words not as a PR statement, but as a conversation. To her, about her, for everyone still trying to understand what they shared and what is lost. He opens by admitting that when he first met Diane at an audition in 1969 for his Broadway play, Play It Again, Sam, he felt something electric in the room. He recalls thinking, if Huckleberry Finn was a gorgeous young woman, he'd be Keaton, a whimsical flourish that hides a tremor of sincerity. She shook up his world instantly. At that moment, he says, something shifted, a spark. He recounts their early days with warmth and precision. Rehearsals, stolen walks, the awkwardness of two shy people navigating attraction, the slow building of trust and admiration. He describes how Diane, shy at times, luminous always, didn't declare herself. She unfolded, quietly, persistently, into the central other of his life. They grew intimate during the play's run, and that closeness evolved into something neither anticipated but both needed. Then comes their romantic relationship from roughly 1969 to 1972, years of passion, of creative cross-pollination, yet not without the tensions of two strong, evolving artists. Allen recalls showing her early drafts of his films, waiting for her to laugh or wince, in effect gauging his own work by her reaction. He says that eventually he ceased reading critics' reviews altogether because he cared only what Diane Keaton had to say. She became his compass, his inner audience, the filter through which every frame passed. And the films followed. 8 collaborations that charted not just the arc of their personal relationship, but the trajectory of Woody's artistry. Play It Again, Sam went from stage to screen. Sleeper, Love and Death, Interiors, Manhattan, Manhattan Murder Mystery, in each, Diane's consciousness, her style, her temperament are visible. In Annie Hall, their collaboration reached legend. She became the shape of romantic neurosis and longing, the axis around which an entire generation's ideas of love would orbit. He reminds us that she won the Oscar for Annie Hall, but he frames it as her vindication, proof that her instincts, her voice, her oddities mattered in a world that often rewards formula. Allen doesn't elide difficulties. He acknowledges the breakup with one of the most evocative lines in the essay, "We had a few great personal years together, and finally we both moved on, and why we parted only God and Freud might be able to figure out." That blend of confession and mystery feels characteristic. He names what he knows, the love, the creative fire, and leaves ambiguous what he cannot explain. He writes about their friction, about the inevitable drift when two evolving lives no longer align, but always with affection and regret. As the tribute turns inward, Woody reflects on the decades after their romantic relationship ended. Diane remained central, a guiding force, a name he invoked when describing what it meant to live as an artist who wants both freedom and connection. He recalls Thanksgiving dinners at her family's table, poker nights, late-night conversations. He speaks of her laugh, her face, the way she entered a room and became its light. She was unlike anyone the planet has experienced, he says, in language that aspires toward the timeless. He confesses that now, without her, the world feels dimmer. A few days ago, the world was a place that included Diane Keaton. Now it's a world that does not, and he pauses in the silence between those clauses. He says the world without her is a drearier world. But then he reminds us there remain her films, and her laugh echoes still in his head. He also addresses the darker shadows that trail both their names. He doesn't ignore controversy. He references how much she showed the loyalty, in the face of renewed allegations during the Me Too era, a time when many turned away, questioned, reinterpreted. Diane, he says, stood firm. He reflects on her public defense of him, her remark that Woody Allen is my friend and I continue to believe him, urging critics to revisit archived interviews and consider context. He presents their friendship as something that endured scrutiny and pressure and frames her faith in him as a rare, difficult gift. His tribute is not naive about complexity. He doesn't demand absolution. He simply places on the record what he lived, what he remembers. He allows his affection, his grief, his errors, and his reverence to coexist in the page he pens. As the essay circulated, public reaction was immediate and intense. Among the earliest responses was Goldie Hawn, Diane's longtime friend and co-star in the First Wives Club, writing that they had once agreed to grow old together and lamenting that they never got to live their twilight years side by side. She called Diane humble, brilliant, irreplaceable, and shared their dream that never quite materialized. Bette Midler, another collaborator, described Diane as hilarious, a complete original, someone whose depth matched her ease, and whose presence was honest and devoid of artifice. Actors like Ed Begley Jr. recalled working with her in book club, speaking of her warmth, her generosity, the ease she brought to set. Francis Ford Coppola lauded her as infinitely intelligent, a creative personality in full command of nuance and wit. Across platforms, Instagram, X, public statements, dozens of names poured out grief. Jane Fonda, Reese Witherspoon, Viola Davis, Steve Martin, Kate Hudson, all recalling specific moments, small gestures, the uniqueness of her light. Behind that public outpouring lies the quieter story of her final months. Diane died on October 11, 2025, at her home in Los Angeles. In the months preceding, her health had declined suddenly, though few close friends fully understood how fast or how seriously it was happening. She had stayed largely private. The official statements offer no disclosed cause of death, honoring her wish for dignity and privacy. Yet insiders say her inner circle was surprised. The decline wasn't widely known. In March 2025, she listed her beloved Los Angeles home, a 5-bedroom, 7-bathroom property she had devoted years to renovating and chronicled, in the house that Pinterest built, putting her dream home on the market. Some interpret that as prescient, others as coincidental. But in hindsight, it reads like the final graceful act of a woman accustomed to owning her environment. Her final film, Summer Camp 2024, released just months earlier, will stand as her last performance, a closing note in a career that remained active to the end. Through it all, Woody's tribute reads like a public reckoning of loss, creativity, love, regret, gratitude, and memory. It reminds us that two artists can be larger in proximity than apart, that their shared chapters echo in every frame they shape together. It forces us to ask, what happens when the person who gave shape to your art dies? How do you continue in the same vocabulary? How do you speak in the language you once crafted together, now alone? For Diane's legacy, there is reassessment. The rom-com icon, yes, but also the poet, the diarist, the stylist, the photographer, the woman who never married but adopted 2 children, the mythmaker of her own image. In her decades in film, she defied easy pigeonholes, moving between comedy and drama, between mainstream hits and personal passions. Audiences rediscover her lesser-known films. Critics revisit her books. The public reassesses her as not just a muse, but a creator in full view. And now in death, her work feels fresher, braver, more necessary. For Woody, this public tribute is perhaps more than a statement. It's an act of mourning, a reckoning with absence, a way to use language to reach someone who is gone. He gives us fragments, flashes, an unguarded portrait, not complete, but vivid enough to keep Diane Keaton alive in memory and in conversation. In that sense, the tribute is not an endpoint, it's a beginning. It invites readers and fans and critics to revisit Diane's films, to examine her choices, to feel her laughter again. It asks us to witness a bond that refused to vanish, because even though she is gone, her presence lingers, her light still flickers in every frame she touched, every memory she shaped. Make sure to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more celebrity updates just like this one.